As before, I aim to take questions about the asexual spectrum and answer them to the best of my ability. As a short disclaimer, my opinions are my opinions alone, and I don't speak for the entire aspec community. So, let's get started. We're trying something a little new today. My sister listened to the first episode and told me I sounded like I was speaking to a microphone. Well, that's what I'm doing, so I'm not sure what the problem is. Anyways, today I'm going to be talking to a stuffed animal set behind the microphone. Hopefully that will help. The question of the day actually comes from that sister. She asked me if asexuality and aromanticism were the same thing, and if not, what separated them. Saddle up, friends, because I've definitely got an answer for you. In short, they're not the same thing. The long explanation? Well, we'll have to start way back in 1879 with Carl Heinrich Ulrichs, who... I'm kidding, we won't bother with that. But Carl Ulrichs was the first, that we know of, to write down the idea of the split attraction model, or SAM. Not in so few words, because it was the 19th century, but that's the gist of it. Now I'm sure you're asking, what is the split attraction model? For one, it's hard to say 10 times fast. For another, it's the concept that sexual attraction and romantic attraction are two different things. For instance, someone could be pansexual and homoromantic, or vice versa. People who don't ascribe to SAM might just use one label instead of two, i.e., someone who is pansexual and panromantic might just use the label panromantic. Now, you want to know what that all has to do with asexuals and aromantics? Everything. An aromantic is someone who doesn't experience romantic attraction. They don't look at a person and think, gee, a candlelit dinner with them would be groovy. Aromantics place value on platonic relationships, on casual intimacy, on being BFFLs. This means that not all aromantics are asexual, or all asexuals are aromantics. You can be down for bopping squiddles and not fancy waking up next to that person for the rest of your life. You can also be down to make your partner breakfast in bed on Valentine's Day, even if you aren't okay with dinky tickling. That's why SAM is important for aces, aros, and aroaces. Romantic and sexual attraction aren't equal in most cases. Take me, for example. I am as asexual as the day is long. I do not experience sexual attraction. I do, however, experience romantic attraction at times. I am aroflex. Some days I experience less romantic attraction, and other days I experience more. That's obviously not the same as my relationship with sexual attraction. So, there we are. I've answered a question, and it only took me 2 minutes. So, onwards. I saw a quote attributed to George R.R. Martin. You know, the guy who wrote Game of Thrones? Before you ask, no, I haven't read the books or watched the TV show, and we're about to talk why. Anyways, the quote was, well, sex is an important part of who we are. It drives us. It motivates us. It makes us do sometimes very noble things, and it makes us do sometimes incredibly stupid things. Leave it out, and you've got an incomplete world. Honestly, that explains so much about his stories. He was talking about hobbits, of course, from the classics by J.R.R. Tolkien. He couldn't imagine hobbits having sex. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't The Hobbit a children's book? A book written for children? It doesn't need sex scenes for people to know that hobbits procreate. Just like Lemony Snicket didn't need to explain exactly how the Baudelaire children came into being. Also, as I explained in episode 2, sex comprises less than 1% of the average adult's life. I'm fairly sure we're more driven by our need to eat food and drink water than by any desire for jiggery-pokery. Personally, I'm more motivated by chocolate. On top of that, both nobility and stupidity can be inspired by pretty much anything. I can be inspired to nobly donate money to an animal shelter by an ad on Facebook, just as easily as I can be inspired to stupidly spend $40 on beads by a sale sign at Michael's. In fact, I was recently stupidly inspired in such a manner, and it had nothing to do with pondering the unicorn. Why yes, I am picking these euphemisms for sex out of a hat. How could you tell? It occurs to me that the list of 400 euphemisms for sex I found does not include horizontal mambo, so this list is incomplete. That's a baffling concept. How many euphemisms are there for eating or getting drunk? Probably not 400 plus. Anyway, I was asked another question about asexuality the other day, and while I answered it at the time, I thought I ought to answer it here, too. The question was, can someone decide they are asexual after having sex? Absolutely. Asexuality is not experiencing sexual attraction. People can have sex and even enjoy it. They just aren't sexually attracted to their partner. Sex drive and sexual attraction are two different things. Someone who is asexual might be perfectly happy to have sex with their romantic partner because it makes their partner feel good. It may even make them feel good. Personally, as far as I'm aware, sex is really just kind of slimy and gross. However, people still find pleasure in it, and have for thousands of years, so there has to be some redeeming feature. Asexuals can enjoy that redeeming feature, either through sex with their partner or self-stimulation. Which brings us to the new formal section of the podcast, Mag Defines. I dumped a lot of definitions on you all last episode, and I think that might have been a little heavy. I mean, who likes an information dump? So I'll try and define one relevant word per episode. See how that works. Yes, I know I already told you about the split attraction model, but that was technically answering a question, so hush. So, without further ado, Mag defines autocrosexual. Psychologist Anthony Bogart coined the term autocrosexual to refer to people who fantasize in the third person. In other words, they might be aroused by sexually explicit media as opposed to being aroused by having sex themselves. Someone who is autocrosexual might get their Jimmy on by reading 50 Shades of Grey, but not by performing the acts at all. As an aside, from what I've heard, 50 Shades is not all it's cracked up to be, and it demonstrates a huge power imbalance than what would be safe in an actual real-life BDSM relationship. You can probably find better written sex scenes on Tumblr. Many people who identify as asexual also identify as autocrosexual. They don't feel sexual attraction to others and or don't enjoy sex with other people, but reading about or watching the sexual experience or sex does what they want it to do. And so there we have it. Let me know if you have any specific questions about this definition or if I've missed something. Real quick before we end, I'm going to tell you about a couple of books that I'm trying to get my hands on for research purposes. No, I'm not asking you to buy the books. I just think you might want to look into them for further reading. First up is The Invisible Orientation, An Introduction to Asexuality by Julie Sandra Decker. This one came highly recommended. I read the premise and it looks fascinating, because I'm a nerd. Then we have Asexuality, A Brief Introduction by Asexuality Archive. I think this one might be laid out more like a research paper, but it is definitely written by someone who understands asexuality at a very personal level. Last but not least is Ace and Proud, an asexual anthology, edited by A.K. Andrews. This book is a collection of stories told by real people who identify as asexual and how they came to grips with their identities. I'm really looking forward to reading it. I cannot truly recommend these books until I myself have read them, but they seem to be the best books on the block for those who are interested in learning more about asexuality but don't want to troll the internet. But that's it, folks. Thanks for listening. Just to remind you, as always, this podcast is a personal project. I'm doing it because it's fun. Unfortunately for all of us, fun things don't always pay the bills, so it would be great if you could buy me a coffee. The link for that is in the description, as well as my Twitter bio. You can find me on Twitter at WeNeedSpacePod or email me at weneedspace.podcast@gmail.com. The music is Mirror Mirror by Diamond Ortiz. Big thanks to my wonderful editor, and thanks again to you, the listener. We Need Space is produced every other Monday, so tune in next time on SoundCloud, YouTube, or